a new lake on the glacier that could come down again. The mountain's still moving, the sites are still moving, and the public prosecutor opens up an investigation. They would like to investigate the circumstances of the disappearance of 64-year-old Shepherd. And a geologist professor has an explanation of what happened, a miscalculation. So will the prosecutor prosecute actually someone? They have opened the proceedings against an unknown person. More in this video. Guys, this is crazy. Scary news from Switzerland in the Blatten landslide area. A new lake is forming, but you'll be very surprised where. Not where that big lake is that has buried or drowned the rest of the village that was left from the landslide, what the landslide hadn't covered, but also the mountain is still moving. And the danger in the landslide area remains very high, according to a recent statement from the canton of Valais. Very high activity was again recorded on the Kleiner Nesthorn mountain, on top of the mountain, and several 100,000 cubic meters of rock are still unstable. But we will also hear news what is happening to the missing person, a 64-year-old shepherd, and why he might be missing and why they might not find him. Nobody's to blame for that, but there was a miscalculation. All in this video, guys. Let's start with the lake, the new lake that is forming. So the glacier is gone. The glacier came down with the mountaintop that has cracked away from the Kleiner Nesthorn. Everything formed this massive debris cone, 1.4 miles long in the valley, 2.1 kilometers. And at a height, it has various heights, but up to 300 feet and even higher. I said it before, it has covered the churches, the homes, everything. But the lake, this is what is concerning, because that the glacier is gone, but where the glacier now was, we have new rock falls coming into that area, landing on that former glacier site. But there's also a lake forming up there, up at that height, in the basin of the Birch Glacier. That's what the authorities have told us today. And we don't want that to come down. And we know there's heavy rain, thunderstorms in the forecast. So the corridor above the glacier holds approximately 300,000 cubic meters of additional rock and debris flow could occur. So this is not ruled out. That's why down there on that unstable debris cone, they can't work. For two reasons: because it's so unstable, we have glacier parts underneath and within that rubble that haven't melted yet. They will melt very slowly, but if they give way, we could have sinkholes and instability. Also, what they said, the river Lanza that is carving through that debris cone could also wash away larger chunks. So there's no way they can get on there, and with machinery or excavators, forget it. But the danger is from below, from that debris cone, but also from above. So that's the one thing, the glacier area, but also the other side of the valley, because when that landslide came down, it was so massive that it pushed the debris up on the other side of the hill, almost buried that little village there. So this could come down also, because it's not compacted, it's not stable. If we have lots of rain, for example, could wash it down as well. So the authorities have given a statement regarding the situation on the valley floor, the debris cone. The Lanza River has accumulated that lake and is flowing, and has accumulated smaller lakes above the debris cone, has been flowing down the entire length of that debris cone since Friday. And because the outflowing water that's coming from that lake is heavily contaminated with sediment and also debris, you see the brown water, it can no longer be used by the turbines in the Verden reservoir. We knew that. So no electricity generated by that dam. The reservoir's bottom outlet was partially opened on Friday evening to allow the water to flow from the lake into the river below the Rhone River. Some good news for the evacuated villages downstream, Verden, where the dam is, Kippel and Vila. So the evacuated residents from these neighboring villages will be allowed to return for their homes for 30 minutes, only half an hour, because it's not safe. But the municipality of Kippel has announced on Monday afternoon that during this short period of time, the evacuees will be allowed to water flowers, collect important documents, or collect medication. Water flowers, I'm not sure that I would care about my flowers, honestly, but maybe. Who knows? If you haven't been in a situation like this, who knows how you react or what's important to you. But whatever they want to do, they have 30 minutes. And access times will be based on the opening hours of the respective municipal offices, because they want people there to guarantee that everyone's out after half an hour. They also have resumed the search for the missing man, probably the only person lost in that disaster. So they started looking actually on the debris cone of that landslide with a helicopter. You see the picture here. They have resumed the search on Monday. They have resumed the search in a demarcated area at 12:30 p.m. Monday, and specialists from special units, the mountain group, and dog handlers from the cantonal police and the Valais cantonal resource organization were flown to that area by Erdrutsch. And an excavator was also deployed on site, which is very, very risky. And the emergency services will be under constant supervision by the fire department and also the military personnel that is on site. And regarding that story, I have sad news for you that explains why probably that poor shepherd is missing. And before I tell you what happened, guys, nobody's to blame here. The experts and the communities and the government, they have done a great job saving everyone, almost everyone, and predicting that there would be a landslide. What they couldn't predict, because this is a one in a million, or this has never happened before. They say they have never seen this. This is the catastrophe of the millennium, not the century. So the glacier that came down with all the rocks has led to a miscalculation. The experts have miscalculated, but they're not to blame for that. I really want to stress that. So please do not bash them or be angry at them. When this devastating glacier collapse occurred in Blatten, it has buried the village, and it was larger than the designated exclusion zone. It has really spread very, very widely across that valley and up on the other sides of the valley. So now the shepherd, Tony is his name, is missing. And a geology professor, Walter Wildi, has emphasized the unpredictability of glacier collapses. So what's the story? What is happening? One thing is for sure. This disaster in Blatten will never be forgotten. When the big glacier broke off, it has crashed down into the valley and it has buried the entire village. What was left of the village was then drowned. The federal councillor Albert Rösti calls it an event of the millennium. And now, several days after that tragedy, it's becoming increasingly clear, guys, the amount of rock, debris, and ice that was thundering down exceeded everything that the experts had anticipated and calculated. They were hoping it would come down in small portions. They did calculate the worst case, but they even that, it was worse than the worst case. So the exclusion zone where they evacuate the people was not large enough. The extent of the debris cone extends far beyond the exclusion zone. That has been proven by recent satellite images where they could see how far that rubble actually was spread. It has advanced. Eddie, be quiet. I'm sorry, I have dogs. He has always an opinion. Psst. Don't create an outtake now. So it has advanced hundreds of meters further. 100 meter is 300 feet. So thousands of feet further than they thought, even to the southwest. And much to the disadvantage of local shepherd Tony, a 64-year-old man. He had his stable there and he had his sheep grazing there. He is said to have been in his stable outside the evacuated zone during the disaster, because we were all wondering, how can one person be missing if everyone has been evacuated? Here is the answer. He wasn't evacuated. He was not within the evacuation zone. And then you would never leave your animals alone. So the good shepherd did not leave his sheep alone in order to be safe, better safe than sorry. So between the stable where he was and the beginning of the exclusion zone, we have 300 meters distance. So that's almost 1,000 feet. Is that a lot? No, it's not really a lot, but usually when they calculate these exclusion zones, they give it a buffer already. So how could the experts have miscalculated by at least 1,000 feet? So Walter Wilde, he's a professor emeritus of geology at the University of Geneva. He has an explanation for that. He says, there was a mistake. Everyone assumed that this is a landslide. The natural disaster in Blatten wasn't a pure landslide, but primarily a glacier collapse. And the experts underestimated that and didn't anticipate such a large-scale glacier collapse. But nature decided otherwise. That's what he says. He said that he had a bad feeling when he saw the video of the collapse. He said the mass, let's quote, the mass crashed down, bounced up on a relief, and from there was a much wider fan of debris than one would have expected. That's why the debris cone was considerably larger than the evacuated zone. And again, they have never encountered a glacier collapse model. There's an author who has written a book. It's called On the Trail of Serious Natural Events in Switzerland. And also he clarifies, he has written that book, the professor. He says, yes, in the end, it was the experts who miscalculated. In the sheep farmer's case, they miscalculated by 1,000 feet, by 300 meters. That's about 10% of the length of the debris cone, considering that it's 2.5 kilometers long. Now they say it's even longer. But he also says it would be wrong to assign blame now. Glacial mass, he says, however, is more unpredictable and there is significantly less experience with it. And he says, in my career, I've never encountered a glacier collapse model. And he says, yeah, landslide models can be very helpful in this regard. They allow the calculation of fall path. In concrete terms, this works with trajectory calculation. A rock flies through the air, and depending on his hardness and orientation, it's deflected. Then it flies a certain distance, and then it bounces back down. We know that. But he says this was not the case with this glacier collapse. The shape, the orientation, and steepness of a glacier are not really known because you can't see what's underneath the glacier. So the glacier in Blatten is a so-called hanging glacier. That sounds threatening enough, guys, in my opinion, because that tells you it's hanging, right? There's not a flat area where the glacier is flat. It's hanging. It's fixed to the rock. And this hanging glacier detached itself from the rock due to the heavy load exerting the pressure, because the cracked mountaintop was landing on the glacier, and then basically it was triggering the next collapse, a chain reaction. The Blatten Glacier collapse was practically unforeseeable, that's what he says, given our current knowledge. Well, they did see that it might come down. They laid out scenarios if only the tip of the glacier comes down or if the whole glacier comes down. But how that whole rubble that is mixed with glacier ice and the rock, the mountain, that was what they have never calculated before and had no experience. So the professor emphasizes, he says, based on current knowledge, I would say it was neither a human being nor a group of experts who failed in calculating Blatten's evacuation zone. It was simply nature that took over. And yes, they have saved so many people, right? He also says that the authorities would certainly have enlarged the evacuation zone if they had known. And he says, as a general rule, evacuation zones are always calculated generously, and they did this also here. So saving so many people is a success for the authorities, because in the past, many people have lost their lives in disasters like this. So he also said, despite that, in the case of Blatten, the evacuation zone was significantly too small. He says they miscalculated. There was a presumed victim, which is tragic without question. And he says, of course, every victim is one too many. And he says, but compared to other disasters, it is a success for the authorities that they were able to save so many people. He recalls, for example, the landslide in Bondo, Graubünden in 2017, so not that long ago. 8 people were lost. The landslide in Elum in Glarus, 1881, over 100 people were lost. Of course, this is a different time. They didn't have technology. I don't really want to compare that. But still, Goldau, that is absolutely devastating. Canton of Schwyz, over 500 people were lost in a landslide in 1806. So according to the professor, this clearly demonstrates with today's monitoring methods, we are at a completely different level. We have made incredible progress, and I think they have learned a lot from this landslide. But despite all this, the public prosecutor's office has opened an investigation. Questions need to be clarified as to why the barn was not cleared and the farmer was still allowed to see his animals, and whether there was a misjudgment. So the Valais public prosecutor's office has opened proceedings against an unknown person to clarify the circumstances of the disappearance of the shepherd. And they have given a statement. Same with another landslide. It's the Tête Blanche drama last year. I would like to investigate the circumstances of this disappearance. So far, they call it disappearance. That's what the Valais Attorney General, Béatrice Pilote, confirmed today. And she said, should the disappearance end in death, which is becoming increasingly plausible with each passing day, it will be important to be able to explain the circumstances of the tragedy to the family. The goal is to determine whether the missing person violated an order or whether he was in an area where he was permitted to be. Yes, they should investigate to really find out the reason, to learn from it for next time, but I don't think anyone should be charged for this because this is unprecedented, never seen before. I mean, the news just came out, the debris cone is over 300 feet, 100 meters high in places, and so far, no major cracks or collapses in that debris cone, in that pile, have been detected so far. But they're saying that could change once the ice begins to melt, the glacier ice that is in that piece of rubble. Because right now, the debris cone consists of 6 million cubic meters of rubble and rock. And in addition, there are 3 million cubic meters of ice. If the ice melts, mud flows could occur. But they are confident that the dam in Verden down the valley would contain a potential mud flow like this, according to their simulations. But you never know. They have also made simulations about the glacier collapse. But they say the risk is if several events occur simultaneously, the villages of Gampel and Steg would also have to be evacuated. They're the farthest down in the valley at the river Rhone. And now we know there's this new lake up on top of the glacier, which adds to the problem. The mountain is still moving and sending rocks and rubble down. Now rainfall. So we could see several factors coming together. Plus the opposite slope of the Kleiner Nesthorn. Material has been piled up as thick as 30 feet. A lot of material. And it's very unstable. So we have to see if that rainfall that is coming will let anything slide again. As always, guys, I will keep you updated about the situation. Check out my video that I have released about Etna today. It was almost a White Island situation. The tourists were so close when it had a violent blast. When I saw this, my heart almost stopped. Absolutely crazy. So I'll put that video in the end screen. Watch that. And later on, I release an update on that because there's more things that you really should know. So thank you for your support. If you want to support the channel, come to my Buy Me a Coffee site, buymeacoffee.com/silky. The link is in the description of this video. You can support the channel there and I can answer you with a 30-second video message. We can see each other. You can video message me back so we can have a conversation. Link is in the description, as I said. Thank you so much for watching, for sharing, for liking this video, for subscribing. Hello to everyone who's new. Hello to all new members of my channel. If you want to become a supporting member of the channel for behind the scene videos and private stuff from me, become a member, click the join button or the link in the description. Hey guys, really stay safe and have a great spring. Is it still spring? I think it is. If there's spring in your country. So I see you very soon. Stay safe.